Danny, and then
This meeting is being recorded.
okay. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Gianpaolo Verzacci. For those who don't know me yet, I am account executive at Chase Office Interiors, and I really thank you for joining our webinar series today. This topic is really of personal interest to me. I've been very fortunate to work on some very exciting educational projects. So when we got an opportunity to present this one to you, I was very excited. The topic today is linking learning space design to evidence-based research to amplify learning. This is a CEU accredited presentation. It will be 45 minutes long, and at the end, we'll have 10 minutes of question time. So by all means, feel free to send in your questions in the chat, and then we will revisit them towards the end of our session today. If you gave us your IDCEC number for your CEU credits, we will process them, and you can expect your credit in about 5 business days. We are recording this session, and we'll make it available on our website within 72 hours. I'm also very excited to announce our next webinar, which will be on March 24th. It will also be CEU accredited, and it will be titled True Measure of Space. Without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our guest speaker today, Dr. Christina Counts, in very sunny South Carolina, she just told us. Christina is VP of Education for MEAN, a proven leader with a successful background in transforming learning spaces to modern, engaging learning environments. In her position, Christina leads a team of professionals that support schools making the transition to flexible, collaborative, and student-centered learning. Christina envisions a learning space in which educators are empowered to transform education through design, technology, and innovative instructional pedagogy to create learners that are ready for any future. I have asked Christina that before she starts her official presentation, maybe just share with us in 1-2 minutes who MEAN or what MEAN is, because I think most people here may not be very aware of that.
Sure. I'm the VP of Education, as Paula said, at the MEAN Environments, and MEAN is a full environment education solution provider for furniture. We often get the question about, is it MEAN? Is it mine? It is MEAN. It's we have a Dutch background, so that is Dutch for mine. So my furniture, my environment, my learning space kind of goes along with that student-centered focus that we have as a company for education. While education furniture is our nuts and bolts, it's what we mainly do for K-12 and for higher ed. We also do corporate environments. So if you think Google Spaces, that is kind of what we do, very innovative, future-ready workspaces. And that's really in that alignment with from corporate to higher ed down to K-12 of making that consistency of the spaces that our learners are in and the work environments that we're seeing today. The other thing about MEAN is that we have 3 core values, sustainability being one of them that we're really focused on. We are made in Grand Rapids in the US, so we have gone into a new building where we're renovating and really looking at that sustainability for it. The other core value is education, and not really looking at the vertical of education, but the research that we put into the product development, but also into the environments that we do. A lot of that we'll share with you today in this CEU, but the underpinnings really of what we do, why we design how we do, is all built upon that research. So we'll go ahead and jump into this CEU and get started. I am going to turn my camera off while we're presenting, and then I'll come back on for questions afterwards. So if you all want to turn your cameras off and eat lunch or do what you need to do, feel free, and then we'll check back in throughout. And then if you have any questions, we'll stop during and at the end, but you can also put them in the chat box. So I'll just go ahead and share my screen and we'll get going. So hopefully everybody can see my screen now.
Yes, we can.
Awesome. We'll dive right in then. Linking learning space to evidence-based research to amplify learning. This really started because we wanted spaces to be built out of the research and not just a trendy Starbucks vibe in there. So why do we do the things we do? So a little bit about myself. I'm always curious who the presenters are, especially as we're meeting and connecting in this virtual world. So I'll tell you a little bit of my background because it's also really relevant to the presentation today. I have 17 years in K-12. So I started out as a classroom teacher. I taught first, third, and then went to high school. So that was quite a jump. And then I moved into their district office where I was in their Department of Curriculum and Innovation. So we were really looking at the technology we were bringing in, the alignment of the curriculum and technology. And it was in this perfect storm of us receiving a really large bond for new construction and modernization. So when we had this funding, we started really looking at that technology and the curriculum and the physical built environment. And did that align with where we were going with the type of instruction we were delivering in our classrooms? So that's where the passion for furniture came, because we really had to have the right furniture and the right physical environment to be successful with the curriculum instruction and technology that we were implementing across the district. I am an ALEP, so Accredited Learning Environment Planner. That's part of that commitment to education with me, that we're continuing to take courses ourselves to stay connected with education so that we're sure we're really deep in the research in designing learning spaces. Connection before content, so some of that fun thing, and the teacher in me always needing it to have that connection before we deliver any content. So a few little things. I'm a Netflix junkie, which I have to go ahead and admit, now that we've been traveling so much and also home so much, it would become a streaming junkie, really. We just finished Yellowstone. My kids have Disney Plus. So you name it, we are streaming it here in the Counts household. I'm addicted to Diet Coke, not much of a coffee drinker, but I drink way too much Diet Coke. Running is my jam. Right now I'm training for an ultra trail run that is March 12th. So that's a little over 35 miles. So I'm always hitting a treadmill or outside if the weather's really good. Most importantly, I'm a mom of two. Kate, who is 12, and Olin, who is 8. And that really is the why for some of this presentation, and really the passion for designing learning spaces. When I think about my two students and learners and my children, they are unique in how they learn. So if you've ever had family photos or you have kids yourself, you know that 99% of them turn out like this. But it really exemplifies that my son is a wiggler, a hands-on learner. He needs to be very active in his learning. My daughter will sit passively all day long and listen to you. She's the teacher's pet. She's an auditory learner. So when I think of designing learning spaces, and especially when I was in the classroom, I had 30 of the same desk, 30 of the same chair. That was the teacher package that we gave to teachers. That would not have fit their different learning styles. So that really drives the work that we do of how can we design learning spaces that really meet the needs of all the learners and stakeholders in the building. So again, this course is certified AIA and IDCEC, so we'll record that attendance for you afterwards. There are 4 objectives that we're going to cover in the CEU. The first one, we're really going to look at the impacts of space on teaching and learning. The second one, we're going to start to look at the physical environment as that third teacher in the classroom and really think about that as the third teacher of space. Then we're going to look at some design strategies that support increasing student engagement, active learning, and adaptability and flexibility in the classroom. And then we're going to end with looking at one space that's really trending right now and emerging for classrooms of tomorrow. I am going to share with you this infographic afterwards that has all of the data points that we're going to cover throughout the presentation. So don't feel like you have to run and write them down or screen grab or anything. This will be available to you afterwards. This has been a great tool for us when we've been working with school districts. Even for districts that are already thinking of future-ready and modern learning environments, it's great validation to the work that they're doing and why they're choosing the designs that they're choosing. It's great for districts that are seeking funding. Here's the why you would want to go look for that. So there really is a lot of different utilizations for this data that we're going to share today. So let's dig on in. So thinking about that one learning target of there being 3 teachers of children, really, adults, their peers, children learn well from other children in the classroom, and then the physical environment as one of those spaces. It's not a new concept. If you've done any Montessori or Reggio Emilia classrooms, those 2 approaches really dig into the environment. And considering that, one of the things that they look at for students before they even jump into the curriculum, into the technology in the room, looking at the design of the space. There are some common characteristics to a space that is designed with that approach. So let's look at those real quick before we dig into some of the research, because those will be really woven throughout all of the designs that we share with you today. Classrooms are open and inviting. They have lots of common spaces that are really integrated with one another and inviting to the outside community in. The use of natural furnishings. So if you think of Montessori, wood grain finishes, lots of natural, neutral colors in the space, lots of windows and plants brought in, thinking of that biophilic design within the space. Really opposite of what we probably all went to school in our traditional environment. I had very cells and bells school design, one hallway, the classrooms off the hallway. There really weren't open areas and common spaces throughout the building. The presentation of classroom materials and resources that really draw attention and curiosity without feeling institutionalized. So thinking of my classrooms, I had built-in storage that had locking doors on all of them. And so there really was not any furniture or any storage that students had open access to, where they could easily go pick a manipulative or a resource to help them in their learning. So that would have been really challenging for me. When I look at this picture and I think of Montessori or student center spaces, the mobile storage, the tray systems that students can now access so they can really pick the materials that support their learning style. Display of project work, both completed and in progress, to disperse throughout the classrooms to spark creative ideas and engage students. This would have been really hard for me because teachers have this underlying rule on bulletin boards. They want to have the best one. It's like a competition. So you're always looking for the best student work to display, who can get most creative in that bulletin board. They have all of these bulletin board contests. So really to take that and think about putting in progress thinking up is against the grain of what we've always learned in our teacher programs. So starting to think about that value of the creativity and the communication that happens whenever that in progress work is displayed and shared. And the last one is thinking about the layouts, where we can design them to be a small group, a large group activity, or even one-to-one independent work. So is that space flexible to meet all of those different group sizes? So we'll see a lot of those characteristics in the designs that we're going to share within the research. So looking at that first one, flexibility, really creating adaptable spaces to support people, activities, and change. I think I always go, when I'm looking at spaces and the research, I quickly go to the students and the teachers, but really thinking about all the stakeholders in the building and what they need for it to be flexible, and also what kind of feedback they can provide to us. I know the custodians and maintenance give us the best feedback on how and what we need to incorporate in our furniture designs and in the designs that we're putting in. So really thinking about that flexibility for all the stakeholders in the room. So for this research, I wanted to put some clarifying points out there. This research is really looking at flexibility with these definitions. So supporting different users over the course of a day or a week, where it talked about adaptable being more architectural intervention to infrastructure. So for this research, we're really thinking about movable walls, garage doors, acoustical partitions, swing walls, furniture on casters that can be moved, and that users can make that change to the space themselves. So instead of it needing to happen over a period of time, it could happen on the fly really quickly, and users can do it. Further defining that flexibility from the research is there's adequate space for users within. Users have ownership, changeable focal points. So this is very different from how my classroom was. And traditionally we've had teacher at the front of the room, sage on the stage, lecture style, direct instruction, but starting to shift that to think that there could be multiple focal points throughout the room. And then lots of mobile displays. So let's look at some of the data that supports flexibility in a classroom. 30% of educators said they reconfigure their classrooms between once a week and multiple times a day. I can tell you when I taught high school, I inherited a classroom that had 30 combo desks in it. It was impossible to create any type of groups or configure that classroom. Even when we stuck tennis balls on the bottom and tried to make it easier to move, it just was not conducive. So how can we design a space that really supports that for educators? Another interesting research study, classroom designs can have a 25% impact, either positive or negative. So I had to read through that a couple times. So if the space was designed with flexibility, it had the greatest effect, a positive outcome on social and academic benefits. However, if the space was still left in individual desks and rows with one focal point, it had a 25% negative impact on their social, emotional, and academic benefits. So what are some design considerations that we can incorporate to really improve the flexibility of a space? Think stacking and nesting types of products, casters, maybe even if it's a wheelbarrow effect. A lot of times we hear educators say, we don't want everything rolling around in the room. So what can we do to still support that flexibility and support the teachers? Mobile teacher desk, multifunctional furniture, and variety. Variety really for those different types of learnings and different activities that are happening in the classroom. So this is actually a little bit larger than a classroom. This is a learning lab, so it's about 1,200 square feet, and it exemplifies a lot of those characteristics we just mentioned. With a variety of furniture, students could choose to sit to stand, they could choose soft seating. There are a lot of multifunctional furniture pieces in here. It could be a whiteboard, also a storage unit, but also a divider in the space. One of the first things we did when we rewrote our spec in Charleston was starting to look at, does the furniture have more than one function? Can we get it to do more than one thing? That helped with our budget, but it really also helped with having adequate space in the room too, that we could get that multi-purpose out of a product. So one of the questions that we get a lot is, what did that look like then when we need to separate for the CDC guidelines or for pandemic guidelines? So this is that same kit of parts or same furniture that we saw previously, just arranged. And at this point, this design reflects the 6-foot separation, but being able to be flexible enough to make that change quickly to still support the schools. One of the things I love and that we have really been emerging is the mobile teacher station kind of in the center of the room. And I think that is because of some of the changes that have happened. My daughter in middle school, her pod stays together in one class now, and the teachers actually move from room to room. So that mobile teacher ped is really easy to take out the door and go anywhere for instruction now. It's also become really popular for our schools who are growing in enrollment. So space utilization studies have become huge. In high schools where historically maybe that classroom sat empty for 2 class periods while the teachers had planning, now those classrooms are really utilized and they have planning in a common planning area or in a teacher workroom space. Lots of that furniture is nesting. It can move out of the way, or it could even move to a common room or a multi-purpose room for additional instruction. And the storage has the storage bin system so that students can easily go get the materials and have access to them themselves. They have ownership of the space. And then we didn't want COVID to kill collaboration. So starting to think about, even with the distancing, how can we still have students making eye-to-eye contact and having conversations so that it doesn't feel so lecture direct style, but that there still could be some of that collaboration happening in the room. So again, same furniture, really just with a different layout to still have those requirements in place to support students for the pandemic, or be able to have that collaboration happening in the room. So moving on to active learning, engaging both the brain and body. I always first go to active learning the body, and that's because my son is exactly like me. We talk with our hands, we're very wiggly, but really this is thinking about how can we engage both the brain and body together. So thinking hands-on learning, collaborative work, group work for those active learning opportunities. So let's look at the data that supports active learning in a classroom. 85% of educators identified movement and less sedentary behavior as a key learning environment feature. And this one really speaks volumes, that there was a 84% increase in engagement, a 72% increase in motivation to attend class. That's huge in high school. We're always wanting to get them to want to come and attend class and be motivated for that. A 72% ability to achieve at a higher grade and increase in creativity. The increase in engagement for us is something as educators we are always working towards, because there is a direct correlation that anytime we can improve engagement, we know we are improving academic outcomes. So it's kind of something we're always on the hunt of, how do we keep our learners more engaged? And then this data point was really interesting, that the #1 skill employers are looking for in their new hires are the ability to problem solve and make decisions together. So active learning is what helps students develop this skill. So it's not necessarily that they're looking for certain content that they're coming with. They're really looking at soft skills. I'll tell you a story that is interesting. When I first started with Charleston in the role of innovation and seeking out innovation in the district, one thing that was really alarming when we started analyzing was we had Boeing and an Amazon and lots of Google companies, type companies and tech companies coming to the area. And they were not hiring our graduates for even entry-level jobs, or even locally. They were willing to pay relocation and moving fees to have others brought in for these jobs. So it was very alarming for us as a school district. So we conducted a lot of roundtables with these companies, and we were invited to one mock interview with one of the companies. And so I thought I had that thing nailed. I was prepared with my resume. I was ready to answer questions about it on the other side of the table. But instead, they put us in a room, me and my colleagues, who were actually my competition competing for this job, and it gave us a problem to solve. How many golf balls would fill a school bus? So as we were trying to solve this problem, they were walking around with their clipboards and taking notes. It was really nerve-wracking. It was like, you know, the fishbowl happening. And afterwards, when they debriefed with us, they explained that they cannot teach the soft skills in the content of the job, that they're really looking for candidates that are coming in with good communication, good problem solving, being able to work in the group and collaborate well. And that was the first ticket and first round of interviews before they were passed over for the next round. So when we started thinking about that as our classrooms, we still had direct instruction, lecture style classrooms happening, and they weren't really given the opportunity for this active learning, the group work. And so it was not surprising they were not performing well for these entry level and these jobs. So that's really where we started to examine environments and curriculum and how could we make those changes to better prepare our graduates for the workplace that they're going to encounter, but also college if they were entering university. So what are some design considerations to build active learning classrooms? Lots of whiteboard surfaces. It could even be glass in the windows or walls within the space, incorporating standing desks, swivel, the ability to rock to attention, and incorporating collaborative tables. When I inherited that classroom with all of those combo desks, there was not a single table in the classroom, which I found so interesting that that was the spec for so long. And so it's really common now that we're building in these collaborative tables, but there also is research and justification of why we do that. This research study found a 12% increase in engagement when classrooms incorporated standing desks, so the ability to stand throughout their learning. Again, I think back to the battle I had when I taught first grade. I wanted them all sitting perfect, and I made in my mind that that's because it was better handwriting. If I could go back now, I would let them stand and get the wiggles out. And now I would have a sit-to-stand desk to be able to offer them. And then that thought to be able to swivel to attention. So students are not distracted by their need to move, but can really focus on the learning instead. So we use a lot of the swivel stools for students with ADHD or the need to just move. We use them in our office a lot when we're working, the height adjustable ones, to be able to just have a little bit of that movement throughout the day. And then looking at a full environment that incorporates a lot of those design considerations. So lots of mobile whiteboards here, glass windows that could be written on, the different variety of furniture, again, lots of tables for that group work, the problem solving and working together, and then that option for different heights. So it could be the ottoman, a regular chair, standing height if the students prefer. I put a link in the chat box to an article and a case study that's really interesting. It's all about learning on their feet. And it's one school district who took their instructional approach across the school to all be vertical learning. So they incorporated lots of vertical whiteboard surfaces, and their whole thought process was really drawing the learning and the sharing up so that students were looking and collaborating together and really bringing those ideas to vision for everyone in the class. So if you want to extend a little bit after this, it's a great quick read shared there in the chat box. The other question we get a lot about then for active learning and for modern spaces, what happens to the computer lab? When we were in school, there were 30 desktops in a row. We went in, did our computer class and left. But now with one-to-one in all our schools, what happens to those computer labs? So there's still a lot of functionality, maybe a little bit of rebranding to the Innovation Hub, or lots of unique names are coming for them. But opening up the desktops, we still need to run programs on some of these that the laptops or iPads won't work for. So just maybe changing how we design the space so that students can have over-the-shoulder learning or conversations to share with each other. Presentation skills being one of those things that employers are looking for. In the back, there is a media sharing wall so they can share and collaborate, be able to present to each other, and thinking kind of like the Apple stores, that Genius bar of a touchdown space for students to be able to come to. And here's another version of that lab, this one more middle school and elementary, built with even different types of seating in it, the technology carts for the devices, and then a few of those desktops. So much more collaborative and innovative, ready to spark new ideas in here versus the traditional computer labs that we were all used to growing up. So then thinking of that, designing for individualization, those two different little people at the beginning, how do we make those spaces for each unique brain, the unique needs of all our learners throughout? I think about the diversity of students in the building. So how are we really designing to meet the needs of each one of those students? We go to students first too, but also of our teachers on the spectrum of new teachers coming in that are very tech savvy in recent programs where they're taught student-centered learning in these strategies, but also teachers that are very seasoned. I had to learn all of this and relearn it going in. So thinking of that spectrum of teachers, how do we design spaces that really function for the different levels of teachers that we have? Accommodating different learning styles was identified as a key element of classroom learning by 88% of teachers. What are some design implications for that? Desk arranged for small group partner work, individual learning, versatile seating, mobile furniture again, quiet spots. Our corporate office at Mean is kind of like a Google office. It's very open. It's sometimes a little noisy, like our classrooms now get with all the collaboration and hands-on learning that's happening. So thinking about how we address the acoustics and have some quiet spots, students with sensory or just that need to think and have the quiet. At Mean, when I am writing one of our white papers or some of our thought leadership or writing these CEUs, I have to go to one of our offices or one of the quiet hubs because I need that to be able to concentrate and think. And then the last one, storage for various learning materials. Another big learning curve for me when I was working for the district is I was excited to bring in tables, rewrote this spec, took out all those combo desks and desks with the book boxes underneath, but I definitely did not bring in enough additional storage after removing that storage from those desks. So thinking about, are we giving enough mobile storage or built-ins for teachers? I can say this because I was a teacher, but teachers are hoarders. They have a whole lot of stuff and kids come with a lot of stuff. So really planning adequately for that storage. One of my favorite authors, and lots of educators have his books, Dave Burgess. He wrote Teach Like a Pirate. And the theme through that book is talking all about if you give them a unique experience, then they will reward you with the motivation and engagement. And so I often bring that same concept when I'm working with educators or even to the designs that we do. How can I bring a unique experience to the space so that students will be engaged and motivated to be there? So this design, thinking of that teacher that is, or a school who has a very innovative teacher and those that are very seasoned and traditional, or maybe even classes that have that variety throughout the school. This design was created especially for that. So it could go into these groups, a few ottomans, whiteboards still throughout. The teacher desk is still somewhat traditional, but has that mobile table that could go anywhere throughout the room for the teacher to teach or a student to bring. There still could be multiple focal points throughout this room. So it really does support a traditional or a student-centered space. And then thinking of that for primary too, learning on the floor with the floor seat pads. Little ones love to be on the floor. I've always said that little ones like to be on the floor, but I have worked with some high schools lately that have been requesting lots of floor seats too. So all ages like to be on the floor. And then that variety of areas for teacher to be able to have that small group instruction, but students also are able to move to anywhere in this room for the activity or the learning style that they need. And we always are quick to go to classroom. I think that's because it's the most prevalent space in a school, but these same design considerations apply to other areas like the cafeteria or food court. When I think of that space utilization, we get a lot of requests to have the media center and the food courts redesigned. And with the right furniture, where a cafeteria sat empty maybe from 8 to 10 and maybe those afternoon hours, it doesn't have to anymore. A study hall could move into this space. Students want to go into the space whenever it's designed with the right furniture. And so thinking of moving away from all convertible tables, but starting to make it a space that really could function for other activities in the food court. One of the administrators that we worked with was really excited that so many more students were going to the food court because he really liked the culture and community it was building after the design, but also it was a moneymaker because if they're in there eating, then they're driving a little bit of extra funding in that cafeteria. Same for common spaces. We're always trying to encourage those casual collisions to happen, or where can we bring that culture and community to a common hub in the building? And so really utilizing these common spaces with some of the school branding colors that we're bringing into it and a wide variety of furniture so that small groups could come here for study hall, or even faculty meetings could now start to happen in this space, or some small PTA meetings or committee meetings could happen. So really a multi-function use in the space. And then the last one before we move to trends is really looking at authentic. Rows are not real world that we encounter all day in our offices or in higher ed. So how do we start to really design spaces that are more authentic for our learners that they're going to experience when they graduate? So on the top left is Google. So I think when we think of innovative offices, we always go there first because they were kind of the founders or some of the original thought makers in designing innovative workspaces. And then the top right is University of Portland's food court. I know if my food court looked like that, I might have used my meal plan a little bit more. Bottom left is the Stanford D School. They wrote the book, Make Space. It's all about creating creative, collaborative environments that really support students for design thinking and innovation. It's a great read and really gives a lot of support to how we design our spaces for different learning. And then the bottom right is here in Charleston. It's the Benefit Focused Customer Center. This is one of the businesses that we went to visit when we were doing our research to reimagine what learning spaces looked like. And we loaded on a school bus, all 30 district and stakeholders, and traveled around to different offices. And this is what we saw time and time again. Yet our classrooms, our media centers didn't reflect this type of environment at all. So that also really pushed us to think, how can we make authentic spaces for our students that they're going to learn to work in, or learn how they can be educated in these spaces. So looking at the data, learning spaces which reflect real-world collaboration were found to increase student achievement by 20%. And then this study is always a favorite of ours, and you'll see it in some of the designs that we share. Elementary school students were least on task when they were arranged in rows. Makes sense. When you're staring at the back of someone's head, you're not really going to have conversation or be that engaged. They were best on task when they were in a semicircle. So thinking of that, how can we design semicircles into our common spaces, our classrooms, our media centers, wanting that increase in engagement? Design implications: mimic professional spaces, include presentation areas and collaboration areas, and then really making the space where students have ownership of it. A food court that kind of exemplifies some of those characteristics that we shared and spoke about earlier. Those high booth seatings on the left is where I go to when I am at Mean in our corporate office, because of the acoustics and kind of that feeling of my own private little area to go to work in. But yet I still, if I feel like I'm in company, I still have friends around if I needed something that I could go collaborate. So alone, but not alone. And then a common space here for really makerspace, STEM, STEAM. The students have access to storage and tools underneath, or they could be locking cabinets for some of those materials. They have access to media sharing to be able to present and collaborate with each other, a wide variety of furniture to choose the best seat for their learning style. And then looking at a few projects that incorporate that semicircle up on the left. This is the Ignite Institute of one of the projects that Mean completed. And it was actually an old car dealership that was converted into the Ignite Institute, which is all about college and career readiness. So they have some really unique programs that run through there. And so they really wanted to design this space in the research. So a lot of the things that we shared today were incorporated, the semicircles and the soft seating there, so they could pull together and collaborate in that common space, height adjustable tables and chairs with a little bit of that wobble motion to kind of perch to stand to learn. And then those glass hubs where they could pull together for the private meeting with just some soft seating in there. Another project, West Rowan Elementary, where it's the same thing. They wanted that research. And so that semicircle incorporated to kind of be able to pull the class together. Also different types of seating and chairs, different heights throughout the room. All open storage for students to be able to store their materials, but also have access to materials. And then really downsizing the teacher footprint. So I had a giant L shape when I was in the classroom. When I think about the amount of my classroom footprint that it took up that students couldn't utilize, I would much rather have preferred a teacher station like this. A smaller desk, but a table that could go anywhere throughout the room for when you're working with different groups or different places throughout the class. So then moving on to that last learning target of spaces that we see trending right now and really emerging, and esports is one of those that we're getting a lot of requests for and a lot of research that we've been looking into for these spaces. There are over 200 colleges and universities offering competitive scholarships for competitive gaming. So the why is really there for one of those reasons, but also because of the careers that are stemming from esports programs, whether that's broadcasting or digital design, but lots of career paths that are now really coming out of esports programs within our universities. Being remote and during the pandemic, my children have heard me deliver this CEU several times. And my son is a gamer. He loves Fortnite and Minecraft. So after he's listened to this presentation, he's like, hey, can I get a little more screen time? I'm working on that scholarship. And no. But this is HU's arena. It's 2,400 square feet. And this is where we learned some of the design considerations that go into an esports space. So we learned a lot about player collaboration, the interactions and skill development, and the types of student lounges that need to be designed to really support an esports program. I put in the chat box an article that goes a little bit more in depth of the steps to designing an esports space. So if you want a little more information than what we're going to share here quickly, feel free to go to that link. We also have a white paper coming out that we can share with you afterwards too when that is released. So design implications, flexible gaming arena. The games change quickly, so having that ability to be able to redesign the space. Collaboration for coach and peer strategizing. I don't know why I didn't think about that, but just like our kids have a coach for soccer and basketball, there is a coach for the esports programs. Areas to stretch and move. They sit for long periods of time, with some games, so having that ability to be able to get up. And then the correct ergonomical furniture. So could it go from a sit to stand and have the proper chair? One of the things we hear a lot from school districts is we don't have the space or enough students yet to dedicate an entire room solely to an esports space. So can we design a room that really could function as our makerspace kind of collaboration room, but also support the esports program? And that's what this room was designed to do. So on the left along that wall, those media sharing units were really developed to be mini arenas. And then the tables are areas for coach and peer strategizing that students can work together. They also could take their laptops to those areas and work too. So this space could be very multi-purpose for the school. Ed Spaces is one of the conferences that we attend for educational furniture. And this design was with our tech partner STS and was present for the virtual Ed Spaces 2 years ago, but this would really showcase what a mini esports space could look like. So on the far right, that arena to look at that could also be the instructional area or flex into a teaching area. Ottomans that could go anywhere throughout the space. In the center is the broadcasting station. So being sure to include a broadcasting area in each esports design. And then I thought that it was a mistake that there was all that extra space left along the tables where it looked like another chair, another unit could be set up for gaming on, but that was actually intentional because it's so common for over the shoulder watching or for another student to grab a stool or chair and watch as the student games. So that was an intentional design. And I thought about it, why would you want to watch someone play games? But my children watch gamers on YouTube all day. When they were little, they actually watched people open these surprise eggs. So I guess that is the thing of watching others on YouTube and how they learn to play some of the games or learn new moves or learn new strategy within. And then looking at a more sophisticated design for higher ed or a really built out esports program, this space exemplifies some of those same characteristics with the ability to watch the gaming rigs, the type of ergonomical chair that they need, and different areas that they could pull together and collaborate. So to kind of wrap it up, this stat always sticks out to me that 94% of teachers indicated that space does indeed impact learning. So knowing that huge percent really drives us to want to continue the research and continue the support of designing future-ready spaces for teachers and students to really have the most successful academic and social emotional outcomes. We will send this to you again so that you have all of the data. There are 3 books that really do inspire a lot of the work and some of the information in this CEU. From the Campfire to Holodeck is a book that directly correlates the layout and design of rooms to different types of instruction. So it's a great read if you're looking for those ideas on different layouts with furniture. Make Space was the book I mentioned from the Stanford D School. And then the Innovator's Mindset doesn't directly link to spaces, but a lot of districts are reading this in the field and have read it. And it talks all about bringing this innovative mindset to teaching, to learning, to the creativity happening in a room. So I usually will push to extend that. Can we bring that same mindset to the physical environment when we're designing? If you want to learn a little bit more, we're constantly sharing information, research, different designs and projects on our LinkedIn page. We are on all social media, but LinkedIn is really where we're most active in sharing our data and research. So if you're not following along with Mean Company, go ahead and give us a follow on LinkedIn and we'll connect with you there. So I'm going to go ahead and stop screen sharing now and hop back on camera for any questions.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Christina. That was a lot of really interesting content. Really appreciated how you backed up everything, of course, with the data, which I know is very important to schools, designers, and architects. There's a few questions. I still want to invite people, if you have any more questions, this is obviously your opportunity. But yeah, there's a few things that came up. Question number one, if you had to summarize kind of what are the top two principles to focus on in a classroom design, what would you say?
Yep, I would say addressing the different learning styles. So a product mix so that you can meet those different learning styles, but also the diversity. So with that different product mix, hopefully you have the opportunity for an ADA compliant table or desk in there in the room. So really thinking of that product mix for different learning styles. And then I also think thinking about the technology integration and how can you make that very future ready. So really digging in to consider the technology that might be in the room. Is it a mobile Promethean or panel that's going in? Are they one-to-one? So looking at that technology.
Do you see that schools and school districts are really thinking about an integration? Because you would have to have IT involved in that process as well. Are you seeing them come together?
Yes. So we dealt a lot with procurement. That was our main point of contact of who secured the furniture and who wrote the spec. And now we really see a lot more committees or stakeholders coming together where we do have curriculum, a technology director, operations in with procurement. And really, we prefer that strategy. If it isn't available, we're usually asking for that because we need to know those details of what is your technology, what is your school population, are we designing for the diversity that meets your school population. So we do see the committees and the other stakeholders joining a lot more frequently than in the past.
Okay. Another question that came up was, and of course this always eventually comes up by the furniture budget. So how would you prioritize, when we as a designer, architect, or even us as Chase are working with a client, what should we consider when we're managing that budget for a client?
Yep. So I usually first ask the district where they are at on that spectrum, right? Traditional to a very innovative, student-centered, because that helps me define what I would tell them for kind of what is that must-have in your budget. What should you focus on? If they were more innovative, student-centered, I would say let's look at some soft seating in there, some types of cubbies that we could put in. If they were more traditional, it might be let's incorporate more whiteboards into your room, right? Because that they're used to that fits their instruction that's happening there. So it's hard to answer that question without first, I think, knowing where they fit in their school model for instruction and curriculum.
Yeah. Because I guess what you're saying is for certain schools, even a small change can make a real big impact.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. You just touched on it earlier, when you talked a little bit about ADA compliancy. One of the things that I see in this city and in this province, there's two major trends happening in the world of the office. And I'm just curious if you're seeing that happening in the world of education. And that is the accessibility, multiple forms of accessibility, not just physical. That could also be, you pointed out earlier too, maybe students that, have to have a certain stimuli or avoid certain stimuli. It could also have to do with, people that may just have problems with hearing. And so there's a lot of different ways to define accessibility. Are you seeing this happening more in schools as well as we are seeing it in the world of business?
Yes, I would agree with that completely. We've gotten a lot of requests recently for that acoustics or hearing and sound in rooms. And that's probably because of it's a little more noisy now, being innovative, but we just never really made that change and shift to design for diversity. So that 30 chair, 30 desk was it forever. And now we're really starting to be a lot more inclusive in the designs that we're creating and include that diversity. So I think that that is a trend that we will see moving forward.
And kind of sort of related to that, the other trend that I've seen in the city is well. It's the well standards that we are starting to starts to pop up in a lot of projects. I've seen it in an education project already. Is that something that you're seeing throughout North America?
We're starting to see that for sure start to trickle in. It kind of varies again on the state or what region you're in. It's expensive to design to those. And sometimes that's a barrier for education a little bit, is that cost to do it and to design with those in mind. So while I think all of them would say, yes, we want to do that, I don't know that we have the funding or even the policies in place yet that support that fully.
Okay, good, got it. When you were talking about trends, you were obviously talking about esports. It's something that, yes, I think a certain generation really has adopted. I can see that with my son as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a really interesting trend. But the other things that we've seen in the past are things like VR spaces,
Mhm.
and even maybe more or less technology, but also maker spaces. How would you place those two types of learning environments in kind of that trend spectrum?
Yeah, that's interesting. A4LE's one of their conferences, the regional conferences, is all about metaverse and bringing
Mhm.
in that VR and starting to think about what does that look like. And one of the companies is even framing that as eduverse now and bringing those into the spaces. So I think that we're about to see that really push in to our classrooms. While they have been dipping their toe in VR and looking at some of that augmented reality and starting to really integrate that into their classrooms, I think we're going to see a whole lot more of that. And I think even the pandemic has pushed that a little further of along the line of readiness and implementation, because students want it and they want to go places, and here they can just experience it through that metaverse. So I think where we saw a big uptick in makerspace in STEM and STEAM, I think we're going to see that even happen now with the metaverse and the VR and augmented reality into these spaces. We see it in higher ed. If you think of one of the tours we did was to a medical university here, and lots of the courses were using augmented reality with the bodies and different courses of anatomy throughout. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that in our K-12.
Excellent. You mentioned earlier today when we were having a little private chat that Mean is working on a presentation that will dive a little bit deeper into trends. So
Yes.
that's something we can look forward to later in the year.
Yep. Yeah. In the fall, we'll have that one approved and ready to go. So we'd be happy to share that with you then.
Okay, excellent. Well, before I just wanted to see if there's one more shout out if there's any more questions. So, well, I watched the chat room. I just wanted to ask you to if there's any more follow-up questions that our audience has today, or maybe just need some more information, they can reach out to you or come through me, and we'll then connect you.
Hi, sorry. I actually have a quick question, if that's possible.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I'm actually a student in interior design currently, and I'm working on my capstone project right now, which is an elementary school. And I was just wondering, does Mean have any like files or folders that us students can kind of use to help kind of put in ingrain in our own projects? So I'm kind of looking at like some of the furniture that you have. It's really interesting and really cool, and I do want to incorporate it, but I find myself struggling to kind of get like SketchUp models or blocks for that. And I was wondering if there's a way to get that.
Yes, and one of our designers is on this call too, so she could jump in. But if you go to our website, there, first thing I would encourage you to do is go look at the Learning Space Gallery or Idea Starters. There are a lot of designs there with some information of kind of the why or different products that are in that design. So that would be a good spot to go for some inspiration. You can also download some symbols from the website. So you should be able to get some of those there. And then if you're looking for a SketchUp, I think we can send those to you. Do you want to jump in, Eliza, or yeah?
Yep, jumping in. We just was waiting a second.
Yeah, so we actually we have SketchUp files that I'm able to send out. We use Project Matrix, so we have those 2D and 3D symbols, which also work with Giza, CAP, and CET. So you can actually just reach out on our website and we can get any of that stuff to you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. And good luck with that project. It's very
Yeah.
exciting. You're
Thank you.
working on the school project. Excellent. All right. I see it is 5 minutes to the hour. I don't think we have any further questions. So I think what we should do is give everybody the 5 minutes back that they had counted on spending with us. But first of all, thank you so much, Christina. This was really a great presentation, very energetic and lots of very valuable information. You said you will send us the infographic.
Yep.
So we can distribute that. We will be sending out a survey to all the people that attended today. So just to kind of get your evaluation and learn more about the topics you want to see. So we ask you to please complete the survey when we send it to you. And again, as a reminder, on March 24th, we will have our next CEU Accredited again webinar, the true measure of a space. So we hope you can join us for that one. You can sign up at chaseoffice.ca/events. So thank you so much. And yeah, I